As I parked my car in the driveway of our suburban house, the same house we had called home for the past 7 years, I felt nothing but exhaustion. It had been a long day at work, the kind where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. All I wanted was to sink into my favorite chair, maybe grab a beer, and just decompress. Little did I know that this ordinary Tuesday would become the day that changed everything. Walking through the front door, I called out, "Emma, I'm home." There was no answer. I remembered she had mentioned something about meeting with her book club that evening. I had the house to myself, a rare occurrence these days. Our relationship had been complicated lately. We'd been married for 9 years, and somewhere along the way, the passion had faded. We still got along, still functioned as a team when it came to maintaining our home and social obligations, but the intimate connection had withered. We'd become excellent roommates and mediocre spouses. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened. There wasn't some dramatic argument or betrayal. Just a slow, imperceptible drift until one day I realized I was married to a stranger who slept beside me every night. I headed to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and decided to use this quiet time to catch up on some work emails. Our home office was a shared space. Emma used it for her remote work 3 days a week, and I used it the rest of the time. As I sat down at the desk, I noticed her laptop was still open. She must have left in a hurry. I was about to close it to set up my own laptop when a notification popped up on her screen. It was from an app I didn't recognize, with a username I'd never seen before, SpicyEmma28. New message from Fantasy Finder, loved your new post. When can we meet up? I stared at the notification, confused. Emma wasn't big on social media. She had the standard Facebook account where she occasionally posted photos of our vacations or liked her friends' baby pictures. But SpicyEmma28, that didn't sound like her at all. I know I should have respected her privacy. I know that trust is the foundation of any healthy relationship. But in that moment, with our marriage already feeling like it was balanced on a knife's edge, curiosity got the better of me. The laptop wasn't password protected. We'd always had an open device policy in our marriage, though neither of us had ever really taken advantage of it. I clicked on the notification. It opened an app I'd heard about but never used, a platform known for adult content where creators could monetize explicit photos and videos. And there, in full screen glory, was my wife's profile page. The profile picture wasn't her face, it was a shot of her torso, wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. The bio read, "Married but neglected. Looking for the attention he doesn't give me. Subscribe to see how naughty this housewife can get." My stomach dropped. The room seemed to spin. I clicked through to her content, each image and video thumbnail like a punch to the gut. There she was, my wife, the woman who had told me just last week that she wasn't feeling sexual these days, posing provocatively for strangers on the internet. In our house. In our bedroom, sometimes even on the very desk where I was sitting. But it wasn't just the sexual content that cut deep, it was the messages. Hundreds of them exchanged with her subscribers, flirtatious at first, then explicit, and then, most devastatingly, personal. "My husband has no idea," she had written to one particularly engaged subscriber. "He's too caught up in his work to notice what I'm doing. Sometimes I think he wouldn't even care if he found out." Another exchange made my blood run cold. "Subscriber, would you ever meet up with someone from here? SpicyEmma28, I've thought about it. The right person, the right situation. Who knows? Subscriber, what about your husband?" SpicyEmma28, "What he doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, it's not like he satisfies me anymore." I sat there for what felt like hours, scrolling through months of content and conversations. Emma had been running this account for almost a year during which I had been working overtime to save for the vacation I thought might rekindle our marriage. A year during which I had been going to therapy alone, trying to figure out how to be a better husband because I thought I was the problem. I felt sick, betrayed. But beneath those immediate reactions, something else was crystallizing: clarity. The fog of confusion and self-doubt that had surrounded our failing marriage suddenly lifted. This wasn't about me not being attentive enough or not understanding her needs. This was about Emma choosing to seek validation and possibly more from strangers instead of working on our marriage. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkening office as night fell. By the time I heard her key in the lock, I had made my decision. "Hey, you're sitting in the dark," Emma said, flipping on the light. She was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, looking exactly like the woman I'd married. It was jarring to reconcile this image with what I'd just discovered. Book club run late? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Yeah, we got into a heated debate about the ending. You know how Sarah gets. She dropped her bag and started removing her jacket. Have you eaten? I can heat up some leftovers. I'm not hungry, I said. Emma, we need to talk. Something in my tone must have alerted her. She froze, jacket half off. What's wrong? I know about spicy Emma 28. The color drained from her face. For a moment she looked like she might deny it or play dumb, but then her shoulders slumped in defeat. How did you find out? She asked quietly. Does it matter? What matters is that you've been living a double life, Emma, selling explicit content online, telling strangers our private business, possibly even planning to meet up with them. It's not what you think, she started, but I cut her off. I read the messages, Emma. It's exactly what I think. You've been betraying our marriage, betraying me for almost a year. I never physically cheated on you, she said defensively. Is that supposed to make me feel better? You've been sharing explicit content and having intimate conversations with other men. You've been bad-mouthing me and our marriage. In what world is that not cheating? She sank into the chair opposite me. I was lonely, David. You've been so distant, so wrapped up in work. I needed something that was just for me, something that made me feel desired and appreciated. And you couldn't talk to me about that. You couldn't suggest counseling or a date night or even just tell me straight up that you were unhappy. My voice was rising now, anger breaking through my initial shock. I tried. But every time I brought up our relationship, you would say you were too tired or too stressed from work. After a while, I just stopped trying. So instead of trying harder to reach me, or even considering divorce if you were that unhappy, you decided to start an online presence where you share our private life and your body with strangers. I shook my head in disbelief. That wasn't a cry for help, Emma. That was a conscious series of choices you made day after day to betray my trust. She started to cry, mascara running down her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you. It started as just a way to feel good about myself, to feel desired again. I didn't think it would go this far. Well, it did, and now we're here. I stood up, suddenly needing to be anywhere but in that room with her. I'm going to stay at Jason's for a few days. I need space to think. David, please, she begged, reaching for my arm. We can fix this. I'll delete the account right now. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then up at her tear-streaked face. The problem isn't just the account, Emma. It's that I don't know who you are anymore, and I'm not sure I want to find out. I packed a bag while she sat on our bed, alternating between sobbing and trying to explain herself. None of it made a difference. By 9 p.m., I was pulling out of our driveway, headed for my best friend's house, leaving behind the woman who had shattered my world. Jason was understandably shocked when I showed up at his door, suitcase in hand, looking like I'd seen a ghost. Dude, what happened? He asked, ushering me inside his bachelor pad. I gave him the abbreviated version, leaving out the explicit details but making it clear that Emma had been unfaithful in a way that had blindsided me completely. Man, I'm so sorry, Jason said, handing me a much-needed whiskey. You can stay here as long as you need. The guest room's yours. Thanks, I said, taking a long sip. I just need a few days to clear my head, figure out what I'm going to do next. Whatever you need, but for what it's worth, I think you should talk to a lawyer before you do anything else. I nodded, though the thought of lawyers and divorce still felt surreal. Just that morning, I had been a married man with problems, yes, but still part of a unit. Now I was. What? Separated, on my way to divorced. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable. That night, I barely slept. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Emma. Apologies, explanations, pleas for me to come home so we could talk. I turned it off around midnight, unable to bear the sound of my life imploding notification by notification. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. Then, following Jason's advice, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney for later that week. The reality of what was happening began to sink in, bringing with it a strange mix of grief and resolve. Emma continued to text and call, now using Jason's phone since I wasn't responding to her messages. I asked Jason to tell her I needed space and would contact her when I was ready. He reported back that she was a mess, but had agreed to give me some time. By day 3 of my self-imposed exile, I was starting to think more clearly. The initial shock and rage had subsided somewhat, allowing me to reflect on our marriage more broadly. The truth was, we had been in trouble long before I discovered her secret account. We had stopped communicating effectively years ago. We had sex maybe once a month, and even then it felt perfunctory. We rarely went on dates anymore or even had meaningful conversations that weren't about bills or household maintenance. But, and this was the thought that kept circling in my mind, I had been trying to fix things. I had suggested counseling 6 months ago, which Emma had dismissed as unnecessary. I had planned a weekend getaway for our anniversary, which she had seemed only mildly enthusiastic about. I had been making efforts, however imperfect, while she had been cultivating a separate life behind my back. On day 4, I met with the divorce attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia who laid out my options with clinical precision. Georgia, where we lived, was an equitable distribution state, meaning our assets would be divided fairly but not necessarily equally in a divorce. Since we had no children and both had careers, alimony was unlikely to be a significant factor. The most straightforward approach would be to work out a settlement agreement between yourselves, Patricia advised. It's faster, cheaper, and less emotionally draining than battling it out in court. I nodded, already dreading the conversations that would entail. There's one more thing, I said hesitantly. My wife has been earning money through an adult content subscription service, using our home, our belongings as props. Do I have any recourse there? Patricia's expression didn't change. She'd clearly heard worse. Unless she's earned a substantial amount that would be considered marital property, it's unlikely to significantly impact the financial aspects of your divorce. However, if you're concerned about privacy or reputation, we could potentially negotiate terms in the settlement about the removal of content and confidentiality moving forward. I left her office with a folder full of paperwork and a heavier heart. This was really happening. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on, bracing myself for the deluge of messages from Emma. There were dozens, ranging from hysterical to contrite to angry and back again. The most recent ones had a different tone, though, calmer, more resigned. I understand you need space, the latest one read. I'm respecting that, but please know I love you and I'm ready to talk whenever you are. I've deleted the account, all of it. I know that doesn't undo the hurt I've caused, but it's a start. After a week at Jason's, I decided it was time to go home and face the situation head-on. I couldn't live in limbo forever, and we needed to have a real conversation about what happened and where we would go from here. I texted Emma to let her know I was coming home, making it clear that this wasn't a reconciliation, just a necessary step toward resolution. I understand, she replied. I'll be here. Driving back to our house felt surreal. It had only been a week, but it felt like returning to a different life. As I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next. Emma opened the door before I could even knock. She looked different, smaller somehow, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of her usual stylish waves. "Hi," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "Hi," I responded, walking past her into the living room. Our home looked the same, but it felt different, tainted. I wondered if it would ever feel like home again. We sat across from each other, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. Finally, Emma spoke. "I don't know where to start," she admitted. "I've rehearsed what to say 100 times, but now that you're here, it all seems inadequate." "Why don't you start with why?" I suggested, my voice more tired than angry now. "Why did you do it, Emma, really?" She took a deep breath. It started innocently enough. I was browsing social media one night when you were working late, and I came across an article about women making extra money this way. I was curious, so I created an account just to see what it was all about. And then, at first it was just lingerie photos, nothing explicit. The attention was intoxicating. Men complimenting me, telling me I was beautiful, desirable, things I hadn't heard from you in years. I flinched at that, but didn't interrupt. It escalated gradually, more revealing photos, then videos. The more I shared, the more validation I received. It became addictive. And yes, I started talking to some of the subscribers, building a rapport. It felt good to be wanted, to be seen. "Did you meet anyone in person?" I asked, the question that had been haunting me. "No," she said firmly. "I swear on my life, David, I never met anyone. I never intended to, despite what I might have implied in messages. It was all fantasy, all online." I wanted to believe her, but trust was in short supply at the moment. "The things you said about me, about our marriage." She looked down, ashamed. I exaggerated, played up the neglected wife angle because it was part of the fantasy I was selling, but there was some truth in it too. I have felt neglected, David, not just physically, but emotionally. We stopped seeing each other years ago. That's not fair, I argued. I've been trying, the therapy, the anniversary trip I planned. Too little, too late, she said, then immediately backtracked. That came out wrong. What I mean is those efforts, as appreciated as they were, came after years of disconnection, and they felt performative somehow, like you were checking boxes rather than really seeing me. So your solution was to let strangers see you instead, to betray my trust and make a mockery of our marriage. The anger I thought I'd processed was surging back. No, that was never the intention. It was an escape, a way to feel something when I felt nothing at home. It was wrong, I know that, inexcusably wrong. But it wasn't about you, David, it was about me and my own emptiness. We talked for hours, excavating years of resentment, miscommunication, and unmet needs. It was exhausting and painful, but also clarifying. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, we were being completely honest with each other. Eventually, the conversation turned to the future. I've consulted a divorce attorney, I told her. She suggested we try to work out a settlement agreement between ourselves if possible. Emma's face crumpled, but she nodded. If that's what you want, I won't fight you on it. This is my fault. It's not just about the account, Emma. It's about everything that led us here. The account was just the breaking point. I know, she whispered, but is there any chance at all that we could try to fix this instead? I still love you, David. Despite everything, I never stopped loving you. I looked at her, the woman I had once promised to love forever, now a complicated mix of the familiar and the stranger. I don't know, I answered honestly. Right now, I can't even imagine trusting you again, and without trust. I understand, she said, tears falling freely now. But if you're willing, I'd like to try. Counseling, time apart, whatever you need. I'll do anything to earn back your trust. Part of me wanted to say yes, to believe that we could somehow find our way back from this betrayal to something healthy and whole. But another part, the part that had been scrolling through her messages to other men, that had seen her marketing our intimacy as a product, couldn't fathom a path forward. I need more time, I finally said. I can't make that decision yet. We agreed that I would stay in the guest room for now, giving us space while we figured out next steps. It was an uneasy truce, but it was the best we could manage under the circumstances. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed in what had once been our shared home, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how we had arrived at this point. Had I truly been as neglectful as Emma claimed? Had we both contributed to the void that she had tried to fill in such a destructive way? And most pressingly, was there anything left worth saving? I didn't have answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, I was asking the right questions. The weeks that followed were a strange limbo. Emma and I lived like polite strangers sharing a house. We coordinated schedules to minimize overlap in common areas. We texted rather than talked when possible. We maintained the facade of a functioning household while privately falling apart. I continued meeting with Patricia, preparing for the possibility of divorce. Emma, I learned, had also consulted an attorney, though she maintained that she hoped we wouldn't need them. At her insistence, we scheduled a session with a marriage counselor, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Chen who specialized in couples recovering from infidelity. What you're experiencing is a betrayal trauma, he explained during our first session. David, your sense of reality has been disrupted. The person you thought you knew best in the world has revealed herself to be someone different than you believed. That's profoundly disorienting. I nodded, grateful for the validation. And Emma, your actions, while harmful to your marriage, came from a place of unmet needs and poor coping mechanisms. Understanding why you made these choices is crucial to ensuring you don't repeat them, whether in this relationship or another. Emma dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I only want this relationship. I know I've broken it, but I want to fix it if David will let me. Dr. Chen looked between us. Rebuilding trust after betrayal is possible, but it requires commitment, transparency, and time. Both parties have to be willing to do difficult, painful work. Are you both prepared for that? I hesitated. I'm willing to try counseling to understand how we got here, but I can't promise anything beyond that right now. That's a fair and honest answer, Dr. Chen said. Let's start there. Over the next few sessions, we dissected our marriage, the early happy years, the gradual drift, the point at which parallel lives had replaced partnership. Emma talked about her feelings of invisibility, how my focus on career advancement had left her feeling like an afterthought. I shared my frustration with her emotional withdrawal, how her constant rejection of my advances had eventually led me to stop trying. "It sounds like you both created a cycle of distance," Dr. Chen observed. David felt rejected, so he retreated into work. Emma felt neglected, so she withdrew emotionally. Each reaction reinforced the other's behavior, widening the gap between you. It made sense, laid out that way, but understanding the dynamic didn't erase the betrayal. "How am I supposed to trust her again?" I asked during one session. "Every time she's on her phone, I wonder who she's talking to. Every time she says she's going out with friends, I question if that's the truth." "Trust is rebuilt slowly through consistent actions over time," Dr. Chen explained. "Emma, are you willing to provide David with transparency as he heals?" "Absolutely," she said without hesitation. "He can have passwords to all my accounts, check my phone whenever he wants, verify my whereabouts, whatever he needs." "And David, are you willing to eventually move toward trust without constant verification, because a relationship cannot thrive under perpetual surveillance?" That was harder to answer. "I don't know," I admitted. "Right now, I can't imagine ever not wondering." "That's where the work comes in," Dr. Chen said gently. Outside of counseling, Emma and I began to interact more, small, careful conversations over coffee in the morning, occasional meals together. She suggested watching a movie one night, and I surprised myself by agreeing. Sitting beside her on the couch, careful not to touch, I was struck by how much I missed the easy intimacy we once shared. Before the betrayal, before the distance, before we became strangers living parallel lives, I missed my wife even as she sat right next to me. After the movie, as we were cleaning up the popcorn and drinks, Emma looked at me with tentative hope. "This was nice, thank you for watching with me." "It was," I agreed, and it had been. For 2 hours, I had almost forgotten the circumstances that had brought us to this fragile détente. "David," she said hesitantly, "I know you're still processing everything, and I'm not trying to rush you, but I want you to know that I'm committed to rebuilding what we lost. If you decide to give us, another chance, I won't waste it." I looked at her, really looked at her, for perhaps the first time since discovering her secret. Behind the anxiety and hope in her eyes, I could still see the woman I had fallen in love with a decade ago. She was still there, underneath all the hurt we had caused each other. "I'm trying," I told her. "I can't promise where this will lead, but I'm trying." She nodded, tears glistening. "That's all I can ask for." That night, I lay awake in the guest room, turning over a realization in my mind. Despite everything, some part of me still loved her. It wasn't the uncomplicated love of our early years, but a complex, wounded thing that persisted despite betrayal. Was that enough to build upon? Or was it just the remnant of what once was, destined to fade as I moved toward a new life alone? I didn't have the answer yet. But for the first time since discovering her secret account, I allowed myself to consider the possibility of forgiveness, not for her sake, but for my own. 3 months after the night that changed everything, Emma and I sat across from each other at our kitchen table, papers spread between us. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, pen hovering over the document. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. She signed her name, then slid the paper toward me. I added my signature below hers. It wasn't divorce papers we were signing, but a new lease. After months of counseling, difficult conversations, and gradual reconciliation, we had decided to sell our house, too laden with painful memories, and start fresh in a new place. It was symbolic as much as practical, a physical manifestation of our commitment to building something new together. The road to this point had been far from smooth. There had been setbacks, moments when my trust issues flared, when Emma's shame spiraled into self-loathing, when we both questioned if the effort was worth the pain. But each time we had chosen to continue the work, to keep showing up for counseling, to keep being honest with each other even when the truth hurt. Emma had maintained complete transparency, not just with her online activities, but with her thoughts and feelings. I had worked on expressing my needs clearly instead of retreating into work when I felt rejected. We were learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to be partners again. "I never thought we'd get here," Emma admitted as we celebrated the new lease with a bottle of wine. "There were days I was sure you would leave." "There were days I was sure of that too," I confessed. "What changed my mind was seeing how hard you were willing to work to fix what was broken, not just the betrayal, but all the issues that led to it." She reached across the table to take my hand. "I'm still sorry, I'll probably always be sorry, but I'm also grateful that you gave us another chance." I squeezed her hand. "I'm not going to lie and say I've forgotten or that I never think about it. I do, but less often now, and when those thoughts come, they don't have the same power they once did. We had a long way to go still, Trust was building, but it remained fragile. Intimacy was returning, though more tentatively than before. We were, in many ways, still learning how to love each other again, or perhaps learning how to love each other differently, with the wisdom that comes from nearly losing everything. As we packed up our house over the next few weeks, sorting through the physical artifacts of our 9-year marriage, we talked about what to keep and what to leave behind. Some things were easy to discard: the desk where I had discovered her secret, the lingerie she had bought for her online persona. Others we chose to bring with us: photos from happier times, mementos from trips we had truly enjoyed together. The night before the move, we stood in our empty bedroom, the walls bare where pictures had hung, the closets cleared of clothes. "It's strange," Emma said, looking around. "I thought I would feel sad, but mostly I feel free, like we're finally leaving behind the people we were when we were making each other miserable." I understood what she meant. There was something liberating about walking away from the physical space that had contained so much pain. The new apartment represented possibility, a shared future we were both choosing, eyes wide open. "You think we'll make it?" I asked, voicing the question that still surfaced in quiet moments of doubt. Emma turned to face me, her expression serious. "I think we already have. Not in the sense that we're fixed or perfect, but in the sense that we chose to face the hardest thing that could happen to us and we're still standing. Together, that counts for something." She was right. Whatever came next, whether our marriage continued to strengthen or eventually ran its course, we had refused to let betrayal have the final word. We had fought for each other and for ourselves with honesty and courage. In a world where it's often easier to walk away, we had chosen the harder path of reconciliation and growth. The next morning, as we carried the last boxes out to the moving truck, I caught Emma looking back at the house with a complicated expression. "Having second thoughts?" I asked. She shook her head. "Just saying goodbye to the old us. They made a lot of mistakes, but they got us here." I put my arm around her shoulders, a gesture that had once been automatic but now felt meaningful in its deliberateness. "Here's to the new us. May we be wiser and kinder to each other." "I'll drink to that," she said, leaning into my embrace. "Once we've unpacked the glasses, that is." We laughed together, a sound that had once been rare but was becoming more common. And as we drove away from the house that had witnessed both the unraveling and the careful mending of our marriage, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. Not the naive hope of new love, but the tempered, resilient hope that comes from weathering a storm and finding yourself still afloat, battered but unbroken. Our story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning again. And this time, we were writing it together, with eyes wide open and hearts cautiously brave.